right, well, thank you, everybody, for having me. It's an absolute honor to be here. I wanted to start off with this image because I think unlike Stephen and Emily, who unfortunately wasn't here, and Al from yesterday, I haven't created any product that's changing the world or a program that's really changing the world right now. And I just recently, I've been in the classroom for about 15 years, and I feel like I just recently now have my hands even around what this means or what it feels like from an authentic perspective. So really, I think what I want to share with you is a journey of reflective practice for me as a teacher. Okay, so I just want to be really honest with you about my journey as a teacher, because I feel like the journey is really important, because the last 15 years have happened as ed tech has really emerged, as the 21st century has really come upon us. Hey, Adam. So I want to share that journey of reflective practice with you guys, and I think that this idea of authenticity is really what I want to go at today. Okay, so my favorite quote is by the Quaker educator Parker Palmer: "We teach from who we are." So a little bit about me: I'm a chemistry teacher in downtown San Francisco at Sacred Heart Cathedral. I have two daughters. On the left, that's Riley, and on the right, little Emma Lou at the Academy of Sciences in San Francisco. And if you go to my blog, cyclesoflearning.com, and you scroll to the bottom, you'll see a little link, a little project I'm working on right now called Bedtime Science. I got really frustrated with Pinkalicious at night, just really annoyed. So I started doing an evening science project with the girls. But they're all next-gen science standard aligned. So let me show you a couple of videos. This one's from Riley, where we're trying to understand the intricacies of kinetic molecular theory. Don't move.
Mess! Why did you make me do this?
I did. So it's hard to see, but she looks like Hugh Hefner right now with like the PJs on right there. And on the right, that's Emma Lou with her cheesy Target bought Frozen shirt that she is constantly wearing. This is a really bad video, okay? But I'm showing it to you because I promised the girls that I'd show a video of both of them today. I was trying to get at this idea of Coulomb's law and the distribution of electrons. And she was jumping on a neighbor's trampoline and her hair was in the air. So I was trying to get her to explain why, but it really failed. So I'm going to show this just out of loyalty to my 3-year-old, who will destroy me if I don't.
What's up with your hair? Here, jump.
This is as good as it gets, I apologize.
Come here. Jump. Let me see your hair. Come here. Dude.
That's it. Sorry. And I'm happy to admit I'm the proud father of 2 new twins, twin boys. On the left, this is not a stock joke either. That's Samuel, and on the right, that's Jasper. Yeah, okay. So, who knows what's up for them in the coming years. But, I'm a chemistry teacher. Like a lot of chemistry teachers, I'm a chemistry teacher because I didn't get into medical school. And that's really all I know anything about. So, we had to take a picture for our yearbook of how we imagine ourselves. So we staged this picture at my school. We intentionally burnt the goggles on the left side there. But how do you think, in the last couple years, what do you think most people think of when I say I'm a chemistry teacher? Breaking Bad, right? And I don't even own a white pair of undies, so I don't know what that's about. But there's a lot of really great scenes in Breaking Bad where the chemistry's pretty good. This is the opening scene in Breaking Bad. And even on the background, on the chalkboard, the chemistry's pretty good. So I wanted to share with you some clips from my classroom. I went through YouTube, and one of the things with project-based learning is public display, public sharing of content. So I just Googled my name. I said, Mr. Musallam blowing stuff up. And I found these videos that my students had taken randomly, because I'm a pushover and I've always let them have their cell phones in class. So I didn't know a lot of these even existed. So humor me while we watch these. Okay.
If you buy your football ticket on campus, you also get a coupon for a free towel. Those can be redeemed outside my office in the plaza. Friday during both.
It's all safe. Don't worry about it.
Just looking got me. Focus on good. Ah! Look at him shaking around in there. Ah! Got me.
I love my job. It's the best job being a teacher, I'm telling you. So last week I ran a camp at my school. It was just explosions. So I thought I'd show you some stuff proving that I let the kids blow stuff up as well. So these are sixth graders here.
Teamwork here. Goggles on, goggles on.
Ready?
Whoa!
Pretty awesome. And I think one of the great things about being a teacher, specifically with a phone in your pocket, but a chemistry teacher specifically, is that you see it everywhere. Even the definition of chemistry is what matter is composed of. So like everything, actually the only thing any of us have ever seen in our entire life are electrons. First of all, let's put that out there. But it's pretty crazy. And like when you're watching the movies, like this scene in Indiana Jones, I use this all the time, is a great way to teach students about density, right? Like I don't know what kind of PhD in archaeology this guy got, but not all things that are the same size have the same weight, right? And if you do the calculation, the bag should be about 8 times as big. So a great driving question and a great project is to show this to your students and ask them how big the bag of sand should have been. A lot of assumptions, it's made of gold, etc. But that would have been kind of an awkward scene in the movie too. So anyways, even in bless his heart, even in like the Colbert show, Colbert Report, he serendipitously was talking about states of matter in this episode at the exact same time I was teaching gas laws. And I hate to do it to you, but there's some great chemistry in this Taylor Swift video. And I have a 6-year-old daughter, so I have to show this to you. So let's check it out.
Kind of flawless, I wish I could be. She better hold him tight.
All right, so let's talk about this. First off, let's focus on Drew, all right? So first off, Drew is wearing physics goggles, not chemistry goggles. And the goggles are not even on his head. This is ridiculous. But Aaron, what's the issue here, right? The solid is inside the graduated cylinder. The solid should be inside the beaker. That's ridiculous. Who puts the solid inside the beaker? So, chemistry teachers also have problems. We have serious Amazon problems, like big time, especially at Catholic schools where we don't have a lot of money to spend. So I live in Petaluma, about half an hour away, and there's a bar called Taps. Anyone ever been to Taps? All right, Taps awesome. And they have this Jenga block thing, like human-sized Jenga outside. So of course I have to go to the bathroom and buy the Jenga tower on June 3rd of last year. But it's in my classroom now, and there's Matt Liu doing it, and it's a great way to talk about Newton's first law with our freshman physics kids. For Christmas, my daughter's got this fort building kit. Have you ever seen this? It's ridiculously awesome. And you can put like blankets over it and stuff. So I had to get 2 of them. Because how are we going to do shapes of molecular geometry in class without them? Yep, found it. Idol of fertility. Not sure who Relert is, but was able to find it. The only problem is it's actually plastic, so it does have the same mass as that little bag of sand. So it just kind of makes its way around the school with Catherine, who like takes it everywhere with her now. So kind of, humorous, whatever, start off laughing. But we're really here to talk about teaching and kind of how we're going to reimagine our teaching. And for me, teaching was really reimagined for me around 2007. Does anyone recognize this video? It's hard to see. Whose voice would you hear in the background? It's a Khan Academy video, right? So it was sort of, I started reimagining the way I would do my classroom when I stumbled across the Khan Academy. But specifically, I thought it was kind of a paradigm shift because it was the first time I felt like as an educator, I started thinking about things from a cognitive perspective, right? I started to feel intelligent about the way I thought about teaching. It was more than just backwards design. It felt an assessment. It really felt like I was thinking about how the brain worked. And his videos got me thinking about how I could use them in the classroom. So what I want to do is play you a couple clips from his TED Talk, and we're gonna tear them up, we're gonna analyze them a little bit, and use that as a springboard, okay? So let's listen to this first clip.
Once you get over the backhanded nature of that, there was actually something very profound there. They were saying that they preferred the automated version of their cousin to their cousin. You have this situation where now they can pause and repeat their cousin. They could, if they have to review something that they should have learned a couple of weeks ago or maybe a couple of years ago, they don't have to be embarrassed and ask their cousin. They can just watch those videos. If they're bored, they can go ahead. They can watch it at their own time, at their own pace.
So what he's really talking about, this comes out of Rich Mayer at UC Santa Barbara. He's talking about the segmenting principle of multimedia learning, right? So he doesn't realize that's what he's talking about, but I'm starting to eat this stuff up and read this literature, and I'm in grad school at this point, and this is the idea that if you chunk things up and you put them in user-paced segments, it's easier on your cognition. This comes out of something called cognitive load theory. And he's also talking about the personalization principle, that if it's a video that he made, it's a voice they're familiar with, the information just feels a little bit easier. I mean, if we look at the brain, we can think about it in two boxes. On the left, that's your working memory, right? That's got a limited capacity. That's what's happening to every one of you right now as I talk. And when you learn something, it gets shuttled to your long-term memory, and that's how we learn something. So if we have those four elements, that's like information, and we're trying to get them in through our eyes and our ears, the segmenting principle and the personalization principle are just going to make those boxes feel smaller, right? So I'm starting to feel really good about this and feeling intelligent, like maybe I actually could have gotten into medical school. All right, so let's listen to another piece, and this is really this was a huge one for me.
But I didn't think it would be something that would somehow penetrate the classroom. But then I started getting letters from teachers. So now what we do, and this could actually happen in every classroom in America tomorrow, what I do is I assign the lectures for homework, and what used to be homework, I now have the students doing in the classroom. And I want to pause here for...
So what I really want to do in the rest of this talk is analyze that applause, okay? Are they cheering because everybody hates homework? And as teachers, we have no idea how to assess it? Like we check it off or something? Or we collect it and our lives are hell? Or do students like a class because there's no homework? Was it just an aversion to homework and that's why they cheered? It was the first time they thought about it differently? Or was there something deeper on a cognitive level that they were cheering about? But what he's talking about there, I mean, this idea of the flipped classroom comes back to the pre-training principle. This idea that we have content we're trying to learn, we learn it once, maybe in a video, and our brain assimilates that, chunks it up into one thing, and the next time we see it, it's one element and it feels easier for us to learn, okay? So that's from a cognitive perspective. So let's do a little activity on chunking right now. I'd like you guys to look at these letters. Okay, and I'm going to count for 5 seconds, and then I want you to turn to the person next to you and try and repeat the letters. Okay, go. All right, so now let's play make-believe and say like you've now learned those, like you've learned your phone number, and you've assimilated them, and your brain's chunked them, and you felt learning happen. Okay, so now let's go through that activity again. All right, now do it. All right, so you're like, whoa, IBM, ESL, USA, right? Another example of this I stole from the amazing Joe Bowler at Stanford in their math department. I'm going to flash up to you guys an image right now, and this image is going to have a bunch of dots. I'm going to flash it up to you for 2 seconds, and in those 2 seconds, I need you to count all the dots. You ready? On your marks, set, go. All right, tell the person next to you how many dots there were. Boom, 25. I heard everybody say it. That's ridiculous, right? Are you kidding me? You counted that fast? Everyone did 5 times 5. They saw 5 groups of 5, right? So it was chunked in your brain. Now I ate this stuff up. This was like, to the point where I spent $60K on a doctoral program and wrote this dissertation, the effects of using screencasting, blah, 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 cognitive load, blah, 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 right? You can buy it on Amazon. You can be the first person to buy it if you like. Don't, because I don't believe in it right anymore. But I'm showing it to you because I really ate this stuff up. And when the year was over, I'm like, oh, I'm a high school teacher, and now I have a doctorate. I'm going to ask and Google Docs, Google Forms, just emerged, which is the ninja of ed tech, by the way, Google Forms. So I decided to do this thing, which drove me to drink a lot of wine. I asked them for their honest feedback on the year. I did this in 2010 right when I graduated. So I gave them this form. Please provide me with your honest feedback about AP Chemistry this year. And I'm like, oh, they seem to love the class. We blew stuff up. I have a doctorate. I feel really good about myself, I'm like total narcissistic nanny. So here's the feedback. This is from the morning class, the first day in 2010. You cannot make this stuff up. I loved watching you blow stuff up, but I still don't have a clue what stoichiometry is. 8:47 and 30 seconds. The next second, even though I'm not planning on studying science at all in college, your class was the one I look forward to the most. Great, thank you. It seemed to be perfectly honest that you were experimenting on us. I hate it when the problem looks different on a test. Stop trying to be all creative and stuff. Thanks, Napoleon Dynamite, David Foster Wallace hybrid. All right. So the last one was the one that changed everything for me. Not sure what this stuff means, but I got an A, so I guess I do. I consider you a friend. Let me translate that for you. I haven't learned anything, but you blow stuff up, so I like coming to your class. All right, and you're a nice guy, okay? So, it's really easy. If I got non-anonymous feedback, the I consider you a friend would have translated into, I like your class, this is great. Yeah, I look forward to it, you inspire me. But with the anonymous piece, I get the actual truth, which is huge. So I went back to the theoretical rationale of my dissertation, and I thought, maybe I'm missing something, right? And this was my advisor, I came to her kind of like crisis mode. And she said, go back to your theoretical rationale and try and understand cognitive load theory better. Maybe you're missing something. So cognitive load theory comes out of John Sweller out of Australia. And I stumbled across this video of Derek Mueller, Veritasium, interviewing John Sweller, right? And I had this first light bulb moment as a teacher, right? This is in 2010, so we're talking 4 years ago. I would not have been standing up here talking to you guys in 2010. I love that, right? The issue of how to get students to be fully concerned with the task, that's for other theories. So no wonder everybody does an ANCOVA when they do a flipped learning study. It's because you have to assess for all the covariates of their different prior knowledge, right? If you know statistics, we're trying to handicap everybody first, right? The problem was not the videos. The problem was when the videos were occurring. It was the idea that the students were not fully engaged and fully motivated first. So what does it look like when you have a student who's fully concerned with the task? Okay? We rarely do, I feel like, in education, is actually look outside the classroom to see what it looks like in the real world, which we're all standing in, and try and understand what that looks like. So let's go to the real world. We got Luke and Yoda. Yeah, right? Luke is obviously very fully concerned with the task, absolutely, which allows the mentor, Yoda, to be a strong, or you could say Obi-Wan, but to be a very, very strong teacher in this case. We have this other great example of Miyagi and Danielson. I mean, Daniel's like, go ahead, throw that lower Bloom's taxonomy at me. No big deal, wax on, wax off, mechanical skills, I'm down. As long as I know it's going somewhere, and he trusts him. He's fully concerned with the task to the point where he will do that. right? And I think probably the best example is Sean in Good Will Hunting, if you've ever seen Good Will Hunting. I mean, Will is fully concerned with the task. It might not look like he is. He's extremely frustrated, but he is fully concerned with the task to the point where he will leave his friends and he will deal with some of the darkest things inside of him because he trusts the mentor. That's what it looks like when you're fully concerned with the task. So what do all these teachers have in common? Right? I posed that question, what do they have in common? I'm not going to have you think pair share about it or anything. But a lot of people will say, they're personalizing the learning or, things like that. But it's a little bit more interesting. If you look at the video, okay, so here's the first moment in Good Will Hunting where Sean shows up. Bunker Hill Junior College. By the way, Robin Williams wins Best Supporting Actor for this role, okay? He does not show up until 41 minutes into the movie. Okay, and that is something you would see with Yoda. You would see that with most mentors in any typical hero's journey. That mentor is showing up later in the movie, 41 minutes in. Same thing with Lionel in The King's Speech. 41 minutes in, and he wins Best Supporting Actor for the movie. Okay, J.J. Abrams really talks about this well in his TED Talk. I want you to listen to this carefully.
Look at stories, you think, well, what are stories but mystery boxes? There's a fundamental question. In TV, the first act is called the teaser. It's literally the teaser. It's the big question. Goes on and on and on. I mean, look at like Star Wars. You got the droids. They meet the mysterious woman. Who's that? We don't know. Mystery box, Then you meet Luke Skywalker. He gets the droid. You see the holographic image. You learn, oh, it's a message. She wants to, find Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's her only hope. But who the hell is Obi-Wan Kenobi? Mystery box. So it keeps it... Have you guys not seen that? Anyway, so there's this thing with mystery boxes that I started feeling like compelled. Then there's the thing of like mystery in terms of imagination, the withholding of information, doing that intentionally.
Right, so there's something there, and really it's kind of a cheap trick, but he's just talking about the hero's journey, right? If we look at from Odysseus to Nemo, he's talking about these storytelling strategies that are kind of old and tired, but really give us insight into motivation. So let's compare. Here's where the kind of an aha moment was for me this week, right? When I created this slide. Let's compare that to this, right? To the essential elements. And let's see if we see some similarities. And there are some striking similarities between what works in the classroom and what works in the world. Why, like, from the beginning of time, motivating stories have been based on this kind of template that Joseph Campbell brought to us. So first off, it has a delayed mentor. That's a huge thing, whether it's 41 minutes with Sean, or I would pull this critique piece out of the project-based learning cycle as the appearance of the mentor, right? You have a delayed mentor. That's huge. The next, it involves some sort of revision that leads to transformation of the hero, right? They see the world in a different light. Karate Kid's a great example of this. Remember the ending of Karate Kid, right? What's huge about the crane kick? He never taught him how to do the crane kick. That's what's huge about the crane kick. He taught him how to wax on, wax off, and stuff like that. But you never really know if Miyagi meant for Daniel-san to see the crane kick. Maybe he did. Maybe it was all set up. He's like, go practice balance in your little boat while I do the crane kick and you're going to see me, But that's what it means to transform himself, to revise what he's doing and transform himself. Things that he couldn't have been taught ever. And look at Miyagi. He's like, yes, I set up the learning environment so that he would transform me. He's like, oh yeah, all that lower blooms, that was nothing more than just setting the stage, right? And then you got Elizabeth Shue, who's hot. So, and then it ends with this sort of return. I mean, you can say coming back, transform, sharing that work. In the project-based learning cycle, we call that kind of the public product. But we have these similar characteristics. If you look at the 5E inquiry learning cycle or any other buzzwordy cycle in learning, you're going to get the same sort of thing. You're going to get a delayed mentor, you're going to get a transformation, but you get the thing at the beginning, which I didn't say, which is the most important one. By far, the call to adventure, which in the PBL cycle we'd say the challenging problem or question. This is the hardest part. This is by far the most important part. So for me, showing the students a video was hardly a call to adventure. Being required by law to take algebra is hardly a call to adventure, right? returning from the Trojan War, like that kind of stuff is very easy. And with little kids, it's also extremely easy. They're all called to adventure. It's why kindergarten teachers are like the most unbelievable people in the world, right? And it's the most unbelievable learning environment in the world because these kids are naturally curious. They're naturally called to adventure. And it doesn't even go away. Like you have my daughter, Riley, we went camping the other day, and she's like, why is it dark at night? Why is it dark at night? Why is it dark at night? And I'm like, I don't know, dude, the sun is on the other side of, it's easy. Why is it dark at night? But I didn't tell her the answer, and she was insatiably curious about this. So when we got home, I just recorded a little video of her telling me why she thinks it's dark at night.
So the clouds push them. They push one at a time. So first they push the sun, and then they push it up to the sky.
And that's when it's light outside? And then what happens when it's dark outside?
Well, then the clouds push the moon up to the sky too.
Awesome.
And the sun goes away.
Awesome. How's your hair doing?
Good.
Good.
Right? But how easy would it have been for me just to Google, why is it dark at night, right? The thing is, if I would have played that for Riley, she would have just totally just trying to find her Fancy Nancy books and stuff, okay? But if I played that for my students, that's where it's risky. Because they will let go, they will grab onto those definitions, but will also hold on to their misconceptions at the same time, which will create this kind of jumbled mess in their heads if I did that. So if you look at this idea of curiosity, kind of a need to know, and information here, what the research says is that it looks like this, right? It's an inverted U, where if you don't know anything, like the rubber band babies, right? It's very easy for you to become very, very curious because you have this huge information gap. And if I give you all the information, on the other side, you're not really curious as well, right? So, but if there's this sweet spot where you withheld the perfect amount of information, right? And I feel like these theories, J.J. Abrams, it's hard to see on the left, and Kahn can come together. We'd say, constructivism on the left and a cognitive load theory on the right, that they can come together, that it's not about if we make a video or not. It's about when it happens. It's about allowing students to mine that information gap first. And then that applause, can have some more meaning to it. But what's more interesting is if you plot curiosity and processing, active processing of the brain. So let's look at this graph first, okay? So you have max curiosity when you have minimal information delivered, right? You have the intentional withholding of information, as J.J. Abrams would say. Sorry. Then you get a direct slope here. So if you look at fMRI imaging of people's brains when they're super curious, they might be frustrated like Will was in Good Will Hunting. They might be so frustrated that they hate you, but their brain is on full born. I mean, it is processing information really, really well. So this seems kind of weird. The withholding of information actually creates the active processing, right? It's kind of interesting. So, going through this whole reflective practice process, I sort of realized that whether it was the project-based learning or the 5E learning cycle or modeling instruction or flipped instruction, that all of that was a little bit too complicated for me as I was developing, that I needed some sort of lesson planning checklist, something really simple for me, where I could say, regardless of pedagogical model, if I do these 3 things, then I am teaching the way that my learning process has told me works for me. So here's my checklist, all right? And this is not to say that following kind of the project-based learning cycle or any other inquiry cycle isn't amazing and what you should do, but I'm saying it's a process. Like you get there over time through trial and error, and we're very busy people. Right? So here's my checklist. The first thing I just asked myself, does lecture happen later? Right? Lecture's not a bad thing. Does it happen later? The question isn't, does lecture happen in a video? It's, does it happen later? Okay, is the mentor delayed? Right? So let me show you kind of the anti-story of that to provide sort of an example. So here's an example of a lesson that I was doing about 3 years ago, a typical lesson where I made a video on how to balance combustion reactions for the students that they'd watch at home first, right? So your traditional sort of flipped classroom moment. They're watching the video at home, and then they come into class the next day and we do a lab, right? They put different candles under a jar, and I ask them, what happens when I put the jar over the candle? And they all say that the candle goes out. And then I ask them, why does the candle go out? And what do they say? Runs out of oxygen, right? So then I give them a bigger jar, and the candle stays lit longer. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel really great about myself. Like, what a good experiment. They get it, it's amazing. And then one day, and I've told this story a few times, so I apologize if anyone's heard it. Then one day, this kid in the back of the classroom, Kevin Yang, actually, he's now a senior at Berkeley, he raises his hand and just says, I don't believe you. I don't think it's the oxygen, right? So then we have this back and forth where I'm feeling like a total imposter, and I know that he has my AP Chemistry for Dummies, like he's found it. And he knows I didn't get into medical school, and he knows that I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm like, oh man. And then I said something to him that really changed sort of the pedagogy of the day for me. Instead of saying, oh, we'll talk about it later, which I usually would say, because I got to get through my content, I just said, prove it, right? And the moment I said, prove it, everyone got really excited. And he said, all right, well, check this out. Instead of putting the candles in different jars, I just put the two candles in the same jar. And I found this little rubber stopper over on the side, and I grabbed it, and I put one candle on top of it. And there was one candle taller than the other. Check out what happened.
Yeah, I'm ready.
That's the first instinct. Everybody thinks that the candle is using up all of the oxygen. Okay, but it's not. It's getting...
Okay? So he's like, the top one goes out first. So there's got to be something else going on because there's still oxygen in there, or else the bottom one wouldn't still be lit. Right? So he goes, I think it's a little bit more complicated than your whole, it runs out of oxygen thing. Right? And now I'm like, oh man. and I'm thinking about that scene in Apollo 13, right? And I'm like, oh, it was the carbon dioxide. He goes, I think it's the carbon dioxide. And I'm like, oh, it was the carbon dioxide. They're poisoning themselves with their own carbon dioxide. They're not running, you can see the CO2 right there. It's kind of hard to see. They're not running out of oxygen. It's putting itself out with its own carbon dioxide. And he gives me that hypothesis, and I just say, all right, prove it, right? I'm on a roll at this point. So he goes back and does this.
Putting out the top one first.
Is that why they cut out faster when there's more?
Yeah. So there's 3 of them producing CO2. Okay.
All right, so he's like, well, it produced CO2 from your video you showed us last night, right? So now it's full of just CO2 and it goes out right away. So he goes, I think it's the CO2. So I don't know if this proves it or not, but this was the best day I had in the classroom that year. Stimulated by me not knowing it and having told them for years that it was the oxygen. All of you thought it was the oxygen, right? So I'm like, oh man, this is ridiculous. You love it because you don't hear it, right? That's why that class was exciting, because I didn't know and they didn't know, and we were all trying to figure out why, right? And now I am better because of it. Second, are the products public, right? Is what they are doing something that actually is from a region where it can actually change the world? Because the secret's out. They can become famous on YouTube, right? The secret's out. They do not need certain things that we needed to accomplish what we needed to accomplish. So are they public? I love Austin Kleon from his book, Share Your Work. If it's not public, it doesn't exist. And I don't mean Facebook, okay? Or Snapchat. Or whatever. I mean, even my dad is on Facebook. It's totally awkward. He posts just videos of dogs constantly. Like this one. This is even one of a cat chasing lizards around. And sometimes I give in too. I just bought this shirt at Urban Outfitters the other day, and I had to take a picture of it and post it to Facebook, obviously. I don't know why, but I got 28 likes from that. Pretty cool. I think the late David Carr talks about Facebook best, where he says, Facebook is a bit like a big dog galloping towards you in the park. More often than not, it's hard to tell whether it wants to play with you or eat you, okay? So, I don't know. I've now 5 times deleted Facebook from my phone and re-put it on. So, I'm not sure, but I'm talking about other mediums, like TED is a great example, where the kids know that people will watch it. They know that it will change the world. Last year at our school, the kids came and they said, we want to do a TEDx youth event at our school, right? So we formed a team and we did TEDx Youth at SHC, and it was incredible. I mean, this was from the event last year. That's them looking at their peers from neighboring schools. They don't look at me that way, right? And they weren't getting a grade for doing that. The motivation came out of the public product, a public product that we all trust, right? We had kids up there singing musicals. This is Catherine Pan, freshman, talking about archery as a metaphor. I didn't know that she was a nationally ranked archer, right? This is Alexi Aristegi, who 3D printed a device to help with an injury on his leg that he had during a lacrosse game. Haley Baker from Bishop O'Dowd, who talked about the complicated dynamic of being a light-skinned African-American in Oakland, which is a very, very intelligent, very complicated talk. Even Katie Emanuel, who gave a talk entitled In Defense of Teenage Girls that was just posted and now has thousands of hits already. This took 10 minutes to get a TEDx license. You all can do it. 10 minutes, right? And in the kids' hands, they did it. This year, I did something different with the students. Instead of hiding their work behind Google Drive portfolios, I decided to use blogging instead, that the students would publicly produce all their work via a blog. Because blogs do change the world. They know this. The Huffington Post, you can go on forever. Blogs are something that is a medium that is branded into changing the world. People get jobs from that. People spread messages that others read. What I'm showing you right here is why I chose Blogger as our blogging infrastructure. Not all our kids have smartphones or access. Blogger has a feature where you can actually blog from email. This is one I just read yesterday. I mean, this is a kid publicly talking about his issues in the classroom. In fact, what is lattice energy? I have no clue. Like, he's reflecting on his learning publicly in a space that he has to curate and be responsible around and take care of. I love this quote from Piaget: schooling isn't worth anything unless it creates for people the capacity to believe that they can change the world. I really believe that the mediums exist for us to do that. Sometimes it was as simple for me as just switching from a Google Doc to a blog. Google Doc, everybody's lab reports look the same. Blog, suddenly they all look different. Why? Simply because the kids knew that the blog was a different kind of public product. Right? Really interesting. And the last one is feedback anonymous. These are my 3 checklists, right? Am I getting anonymous feedback from them? Like this one. Not sure what this stuff means, but I got an A, so I guess I do. This changed my approach to teaching, right? This is just my story. This quote changed a lot of things for me. But what was wrong with 2010? Right? What was the issue with 2010? Because I was using a lot of cool stuff in the classroom. I had a smartboard, right? Then I got a bamboo tablet, right? And then I had a document camera, right? And then I got an Apple TV because I got an iPad. And then I spent a lot more money and got this thing called a swivel. Have you heard of this thing? It'll follow you around the classroom. I'm like, I want the camera to follow me around. That's awesome. And then I got a GoCam, which I haven't taken out of the package yet, okay? And then I was using a lot of software. BrainPop, shout out to BrainPop. I mean, I learned everything about the Civil War through BrainPop. Khan Academy, amazing. Schoology is an awesome LMS that we use. At grad school, I was using Canvas, another awesome one. Socrative to get feedback from students. And what's the thing everyone's using now for review games in the classroom? Kahoot, right? It's amazing. So what was the problem? It was like my Michael Scott moment, right? I mean, there was something going on. It was this. It's like instructions for fun. To make the fun kazoo sound, hum into the larger end of the kazoo. Go have fun, Give the kid a kazoo. What's the problem here? I think I was treating technology this way, that it was a scaffolding tool, assuming that they were all equally motivated and equally concerned with the task. Nate Cornell from Williams College says, difficulty builds mental muscle while ease builds only confidence, right? Confidence looks more appealing when kids have 6 classes in the day and you're concerned with them liking your class. The mental muscle is a more difficult phenomenon that makes our jobs very, very hard. So why did Kevin add another candle? Is something that I really like. It's sort of a mission statement for me, but I think it's kind of the wrong question. Like, why did Kevin add another candle? Should be more like, why isn't everybody else, right, adding more candles? Because, You know, it's why we chose to not have a filter for the AP Chemistry class at our school. Yes, I'm scared for the scores to come back in 2 weeks because I had 130 kids in AP Chemistry, so many of them that are not great test takers, right? I could have picked 20 and they would have all passed, right? They were all Kevins. Who cares? What fun is there in that, right? I want that 2 from that kid that would get like a 0.5 on it. You know, I don't know if everybody is now, but I know I see things like this in my classroom with the delayed mentor approach that I didn't before. Like Jonathan Chan, who straps his iPhone to his head every time we do a lab in class and creates these first-person selfie videos in the classroom. You know, when the lab is the first thing we do, I start to see this authenticity of the kids come out, this fun kind of approach that I used to not see. I have text exchange. I text with my students, get over it. I have text exchange like this with Bruno, who's trying to figure out how to build a battery that can charge this circuit that he's created to play a song. And he figured it out. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I capture moments like this in science camp where you have this kid using a device called the Makey Makey. Have you guys heard of the Makey Makey? It's pretty amazing, where he has a cousin with cerebral palsy, and he's trying to create a control device so his cousin can control the computer using the Makey Makey. All right? I never used to capture moments like this before when the labs were cookbook, when the lecture came first, albeit in a video.
Right.
If you're not familiar with the Makey Makey, it's a device which allows your body to act as a conductive medium to complete a circuit, which is pretty amazing. I suggest you watching Jay Silver's TED Talk, Hack a Banana, Make a Keyboard. I actually showed it to my students, and they're like, let's show these videos to Jay. So I got on Facebook, stalked Jay, sent the videos to him, and he sent back this response.
Thanks for sharing your controller for differently abled persons. Made me wonder what kind of interesting games you could play with that if you tried to play games without using your hands.
And what's even better is Jay's wearing the same sweater that he was in his TED Talk in that video. So there's this tension, I think, that we're all sort of feeling right here that we're really not talking about, that I think all of this can be whittled down to. The tension between the definition of teaching and the definition of learning. Right? And I think it sort of calls into question our careers in many ways. I mean, if you look at teaching, the occupation, profession, or work of a teacher, okay? Then if you look at learning, the acquisition of knowledge or skills through experience, study, or being taught, right? So the outcome only kind of involves us, but the profession like fully involves us. So how do we deal with that tension? I think it's moving simply, it's very simple, from a paradigm of teacher provides info to teacher provides info gap. That's what we're doing. It's simply, that's just what we're called to do. That's what we were called to do a billion years ago, by the way, too. It's not about the technology. You know, I love when Diana Laufenberg said, Q last year, our interests are not their curiosities. So if the curiosity, though, needs to be authentic and our curriculum needs to be pointed in a direction towards an AP test or towards some end result, how do we resolve those two things? How do we manipulate them into having curiosity about what we know our content is about? And I think that's where PBL and other inquiry-based models really can come into play and becomes a lot of fun to try and manipulate them into sparking that curiosity, albeit involuntary. So here's my checklist. You know, this is my learning cycle. This is really all I think about when I'm done with a week. Does lecture happen later? Are my products public? And is my feedback anonymous? And if I can say yes to all three of these, I'm happy with where I am in the classroom. So my question for you is, what is your checklist as you guys go through the next couple days? So thank you very much.